Darth Vader's activities on Kamino during the events surrounding the Force Unleashed hold a dark and chilling significance, presenting a vivid portrait of the Sith Lord's cunning and ambition. While much of the Galactic Empire's efforts were publicly consumed with consolidating power, quelling rebellion, and ensuring the dominance of Emperor Palpatine, Vader harbored his own secret ambitions. Kamino, the planet once heralded as the breeding ground for the Republic's Grand Army, became the backdrop for Vader's shadowy experiments in cloning a project that would intertwine science, the Force, and the dark side in ways previously unseen. Vader's return to Kamino after the Clone Wars was a calculated move. The Kaminoans, with their unparalleled expertise in genetic manipulation, had been pivotal during the days of the Republic. However, their loyalty was never ideological, it was transactional, bound by contracts and credits. Vader exploited this, leveraging both the might of the Empire and the allure of secrecy to coerce the remaining cloners into resuming their operations, but this time for purposes far removed from creating mere soldiers. This new phase of cloning was steeped in Vader's personal obsession harnessing the Force through synthetic lifeforms. The genesis of Vader's project stemmed from his awareness of his own limitations. Encased within the life-sustaining armor that had become synonymous with his identity, Vader was a shadow of the warrior he had once been as Anakin Skywalker. The lava of Mustafar had robbed him of his physical prowess, yet his connection to the Force, though twisted by anger and suffering, remained formidable. But Vader was not content with survival, he craved supremacy. For this, he required a means to transcend the boundaries of his ruined body. His secret cloning on Kamino was not simply an experiment in replication, but an audacious attempt to create vessels that could amplify the dark side itself, beings who would serve as extensions of his will and, potentially, as candidates for his own consciousness should he ever unlock the secrets of transferring his essence. The central figure in this clandestine endeavor was Starkiller, Vader's apprentice and a creation born of the Sith Lord's thirst for power. Starkiller, whose true name was Galen Marek, was initially discovered by Vader as a child of exceptional Force potential. He was trained in secrecy to one day overthrow the Emperor, a reflection of the Sith tradition where the apprentice must challenge and supplant the master. However, Starkiller's unforeseen betrayal of Vader during the events leading up to the rebellion forced the Sith Lord to reassess his approach. Rather than abandoning his apprentice entirely, Vader sought to perfect him through cloning. Cloning a Force-sensitive being was no trivial feat. The genetic replication of ordinary humans was already fraught with challenges, but to reproduce a being attuned to the Force was an endeavor laden with metaphysical complexities. The Force, as an energy field created by all living things, was deeply intertwined with the essence of an individual. Simply recreating a body would not guarantee the replication of its connection to the Force. Vader understood this, and, under the veil of secrecy, began conducting trials on Kamino to overcome this barrier. The Kaminoans, ever the pragmatic scientists, were reluctant at first, knowing the potential dangers of tampering with the Force on a genetic level. Yet Vader's mastery of intimidation left them little choice. The initial stages of the project were riddled with failure. Many of the cloned subjects, grown in the spires of Kamino's laboratories, were physically unstable. Some were plagued by rapid cellular degradation, while others manifested grotesque mutations. Even among those who were biologically stable, the replication of Starkiller's Force sensitivity remained elusive. Many of the clones displayed no connection to the Force, rendering them useless for Vader's purposes. Others were partially attuned but lacked the discipline or control necessary to wield it effectively, often succumbing to madness as their minds buckled under the weight of the dark side's influence. For Vader, these failures were a source of frustration but not discouragement. The Sith thrived on adversity, and each failure served to refine the process. Vader's own mastery of the dark side became integral to the experiments. He subjected the clones to brutal trials, testing their resilience and manipulating their emotions to draw out the Force. He sought to replicate the conditions that had forged his own transformation: pain, anger, and loss. The clones, however, were not Anakin Skywalker. They lacked the depth of experience and the innate connection to the Force that Vader once possessed. As such, they were little more than hollow imitations, unable to meet the standards their creator demanded. The breakthrough came with the realization that memory played a crucial role in Force sensitivity. Starkiller's strength in the Force was not merely a product of his genetics, but of his experiences, his trauma, his training, and his emotional bonds. The Kaminoans, with their technological prowess, devised a method to implant fragments of Starkiller's memories into the clones. This was a dangerous process, as the imposition of another's consciousness often led to psychological instability. Yet it was a necessary risk, for without the echoes of Starkiller's experiences, the clones would remain spiritually inert. The result of these efforts was a new generation of clones that bore a semblance of their predecessors' power. Yet even among these, few could achieve the balance of strength, skill, and mental stability that Vader required. The process became one of brutal selection, with Vader personally culling those he deemed unworthy. He pushed the surviving clones to their limits, forcing them into combat scenarios designed to evoke fear, anger, and desperation. In these moments, the dark side would flare within them, but only briefly. Most were consumed by their emotions, either descending into madness or succumbing to physical collapse. Amid this chaos, a single clone began to emerge as a viable candidate. This clone, distinguished by his resilience and apparent ability to harness the Force with increasing proficiency, caught Vader's attention. Unlike the others, this clone exhibited flashes of independence and determination, traits reminiscent of the original Starkiller. Yet these very qualities also posed a risk. As Vader observed the clone's growth, he recognized the same potential for defiance that had led to Starkiller's rebellion. This raised a critical question: could loyalty be engineered? Or was the nature of the Sith apprentice inherently tied to betrayal? Vader's solution was as ruthless as it was ingenious. He sought to condition the clone through a combination of psychological manipulation and direct exposure to the dark side. By subjecting the clone to repeated simulations of loss and betrayal, Vader aimed to shatter any sense of individuality and forge an unbreakable bond of subservience. Yet, even as he enacted this plan, doubts lingered. The original Starkiller's bond with Juno Eclipse, his former lover, had been a source of both strength and defiance. Vader knew that the echoes of these emotions, embedded within the clone's implanted memories, could either serve as a catalyst for loyalty or reignite the rebellious spark. This dynamic reached its peak during the later stages of the project, as the clone began to exhibit not only the power but also the emotional complexity of his predecessor. The memories implanted within him became a double-edged sword, providing the depth needed to access the Force but also threatening to undermine Vader's control. In the end, the clone's fate became a testament to the inherent unpredictability of the Force. Despite Vader's meticulous planning and the Kaminoans' technical expertise, the clone could not be fully controlled. His ultimate rebellion against Vader mirrored the cycle of betrayal that defined the Sith tradition. Vader's cloning experiments on Kamino, though shrouded in secrecy, were a microcosm of his broader struggle. They reflected his desire to overcome his own limitations, to bend the Force to his will, and to create a legacy unbound by the weaknesses of flesh. Yet they also underscored the inherent flaws in his approach. The dark side, for all its power, is a force of chaos and destruction. By seeking to impose order upon it through science and manipulation, Vader inadvertently sowed the seeds of his own undoing. These events, while deeply personal to Vader, had implications far beyond Kamino. The very existence of Force-sensitive clones challenged the natural order of the galaxy, raising questions about the nature of identity, free will, and the Force itself. Moreover, they hinted at the potential for even greater abuses of cloning technology, a prospect that would echo through the annals of galactic history long after the fall of the Empire. As the stormy seas of Kamino bore witness to the rise and fall of Vader's creations, one truth became evident: the Sith Lord's reach often exceeded his grasp. His ambition to master life itself was a reflection of his own inner torment, a futile attempt to reclaim the control he had lost on Mustafar. In the end, the cloning experiments were not merely a scientific endeavor, but a tragic expression of Vader's fractured soul, a reminder that even the most powerful beings in the galaxy are not immune to the consequences of their own choices. The shadow of Kamino and the secretive cloning project would linger, a dark chapter in the saga of Darth Vader, and a haunting example of the perils of wielding power without restraint. Darth Vader's clandestine cloning efforts on Kamino during the events of the Force Unleashed revolved around the replication of Starkiller, his secret apprentice. Starkiller, born Galen Marek, was a powerful Force-sensitive individual whom Vader had groomed from childhood to become an instrument of destruction and an eventual ally in overthrowing Emperor Palpatine. When Starkiller betrayed Vader and catalyzed the formation of the Rebel Alliance, the Sith Lord sought to recreate his apprentice through cloning, a process laden with peril, ambition, and the dark side of the Force. The focus of Vader's cloning was not simply on creating an exact physical replica of Starkiller, but rather a clone that could replicate his incredible Force sensitivity, combat prowess, and raw potential. This distinction is crucial because cloning a Force-sensitive being, particularly one as powerful as Starkiller, was unprecedented. The Kaminoans, masters of genetic engineering, had succeeded in mass-producing non-Force-sensitive clones for the Republic's army, but duplicating someone with a connection to the Force introduced unique challenges. Vader's early attempts to clone Starkiller were fraught with failure. The clones were grown rapidly, as time was of the essence, but this led to rampant cellular instability. Many of the early clones deteriorated physically before they could even reach a state of consciousness, their bodies unable to withstand the accelerated aging process combined with the unique genetic signature of a Force-sensitive being. Others manifested severe mental instability, unable to endure the torrent of emotions and Force energy coursing through them. These clones were deemed failures and were either destroyed outright or left to perish within the cloning vats. For the clones that survived the initial physical trials, the results were mixed. Some were able to harness basic Force abilities, such as telekinesis or precognition, but lacked the refined control and raw power that had made Starkiller a formidable warrior. Others exhibited greater potential but fell prey to violent outbursts or mental fragmentation, unable to reconcile the dark side energy Vader forced upon them with their fragmented consciousness. The Kaminoan scientists worked tirelessly to refine the process, but the failures underscored a fundamental truth: the Force is not merely biological, it is spiritual, tied to the essence of an individual. Replicating Starkiller's genetics was one thing, but duplicating his connection to the Force required more than science. This led Vader to incorporate psychological conditioning and memory implantation into the cloning process. Using advanced technology, the Kaminoans were able to imprint fragments of Starkiller's memories into the developing clones. This was intended to give them the emotional depth and life experiences necessary to connect with the Force as Starkiller had. However, the results were unpredictable. The memories often created a dissonance within the clones as they struggled to reconcile their artificial existence with the deeply personal and traumatic experiences of their original template. Many of the clones descended into madness, their minds collapsing under the weight of Starkiller's memories. Despite these challenges, a few of the clones began to show promise. These successes were subjected to brutal tests of loyalty and strength under Vader's watchful eye. The Sith Lord used a combination of combat trials, psychological torment, and exposure to the dark side to forge them into potential apprentices. He pushed them to the brink, seeking to replicate the conditions that had shaped him into a Sith: pain, loss, and anger. But even among these few, Vader found little satisfaction. The clones lacked the original Starkiller's instinct, his creativity in battle, and his ability to harness the dark side with precision. Most were too broken to be of use, and Vader eliminated them personally. However, one clone began to stand out from the rest. This clone exhibited a remarkable degree of stability and power, showing flashes of Starkiller's former strength and combat skill. This was the closest Vader came to creating a true successor to Starkiller. The clone demonstrated not only proficiency with the Force but also the ability to wield lightsabers with exceptional skill, mimicking the dual-wielding combat style that had made Starkiller so deadly. The memories implanted in this clone also seemed to take hold more effectively, giving him a deeper connection to his original's experiences and emotions. Yet this success brought with it a new set of challenges. The clone's implanted memories included Starkiller's bond with Juno Eclipse, a former Imperial pilot and Starkiller's love interest. This connection became a double-edged sword. On one hand, it provided the emotional depth necessary for the clone to access the Force on a meaningful level. On the other hand, it sparked a sense of individuality and defiance that threatened Vader's control. The clone began to question his purpose and identity, haunted by the memories of a life that was not his own. Vader sought to suppress these rebellious tendencies through further conditioning and manipulation. He tried to twist the clone's memories, emphasizing feelings of betrayal and loss to fuel anger and hatred emotions that would tether the clone to the dark side. But the clone's connection to Juno proved too strong. It became a focal point of his resistance, driving him to rebel against Vader in much the same way the original Starkiller had. This clone, despite being created as a weapon of the dark side, ultimately followed the path of the light, seeking to protect Juno and oppose Vader. The creation of this particular clone was a turning point in Vader's experiments. It demonstrated the inherent unpredictability of cloning Force-sensitive beings, as the connection to the Force seemed tied not only to genetics, but also to the soul, memory, and experience. While Vader had succeeded in creating a physically powerful and Force-capable replica of Starkiller, he could not fully control the clone's mind or spirit. This failure underscored the limitations of Vader's ambition and the chaotic nature of the dark side. Vader's cloning efforts on Kamino extended beyond just creating a successor. There were rumors that he experimented with other Force-sensitive templates, using genetic material collected from various sources, but these projects never yielded results as significant as the Starkiller clones. The Sith Lord's obsession with creating the perfect apprentice, one who was loyal, powerful, and utterly subservient, remained unfulfilled. The clones, despite their potential, were ultimately flawed reflections of the original, incapable of fully embodying Vader's vision. The secret cloning project on Kamino revealed the depth of Vader's desperation and his willingness to defy the natural order in his quest for power. By attempting to recreate Starkiller, Vader not only sought to replace his lost apprentice, but also to conquer the limitations of mortality and the mysteries of the Force. In the end, however, his efforts were a testament to the futility of trying to impose control over something as inherently chaotic and unpredictable as the Force. The clones Vader created were not mere soldiers or tools. They were living beings torn between the past and the present, between the light and the dark. They embodied the tragic consequences of Vader's ambition, serving as a mirror to his own fractured existence. Though they were bred in the sterile laboratories of Kamino, their stories were deeply human, defined by struggles for identity, purpose, and freedom. These clones, for all their power, could never truly replace the original Starkiller, whose spirit remained irreproducible. This truth haunted Vader as he continued his relentless pursuit of power, leaving behind a legacy of failure and destruction on Kamino.